in a particular way. Auditors had come into our business and they were pricing, they were going channel wise. We said, no, we will do it in a particular way, whether we will do it in whatever way we did. I can assure you, global clients, the biggest of clients globally, when we have done what we have done, have fallen in line. Because that's the way the industry works. So my submission is, and we are doing something even more dramatic. We met, without going into details, the joke in the company is that my colleagues tell me, you meet PK, Vikram and Sam and Anupriya more often than you meet us. So the limited point I'm making is, the big message to your question is, you collaborate all these issues, whether it's content related, whether it's what the former vice president said, in terms of pillar of democracy, whether it's the business issues, a lot of hurdles will be sorted out. That's my appeal to all of you sitting in this room.
Right. Thank you, Shashi. Karthik.
So I don't think there's any doubt that the core function of a media business is to, be the fourth estate and imbibe the qualities of a democratic setup that is. But that doesn't take us away from the fact that you're running a business at the end of the day. You run a business profitably or not is relative, in my opinion. It depends on what you want. Do you want growth? You want profitability? How do you approach the business? But like most other businesses, in other genres and other fields, we have a systematic problem in the news industry at multiple levels. So we spoke about the only source of revenue being advertisement, which should not be the case, ideally. And if that were to change, obviously the revenue streams and income streams would also change. But the larger point over here is that, we have to look at the systematic problem that plagues the industry and why we are in the position that we are. And that is at multiple levels. The first being that, not realizing the fact that, this industry is changing and evolving a lot. And the bulk of the challenge, since we spoke about consolidation and other factors, is not coming from within. It's coming from new avenues and new areas that are becoming challengers. So, traditional broadcast businesses are now actually facing challenge from independent content creators. And I think going forward, we really need to concentrate on how we actually monetize each and every aspect, just to extend to what PK was saying. How do we monetize each and every aspect of it and create new revenue streams? We can't be traditionally based on just pure play advertising and think that is what will make us profitable per se. There's also, a whole reorientation of how we approach solutions and problems. So it's a tough business, it goes without saying. It's not an easy business because it's highly capital intensive, human resource intensive, but it's changing in multiple manifestations. I think the most important point here is also to understand that the industry is evolving. And while we have not reached a finite point, it is like any other capital economy and capital market. Until unless you don't remove the inefficiencies from the system, the businesses will not become very profitable. To inefficiencies, I'm talking about reach, I'm talking about distribution, I'm talking about other factors which tend to take away a large chunk of the monies from the businesses per se. Whereas being a content creator and being free-to-air networks, we should be able to decimate our content and it should be able to reach to the last person free of cost. Well, these are problems, systematic problems which lie in the system. And if they were actually in spirit, in letter and spirit, brought in the way they're supposed to be, I don't think the business should be unprofitable.
Right. Thank you, Karthik. My bit on it is that I think any business or any identity will have to be true to the core. I don't think that any one of us can afford to contradict our existence, which is that of a fourth estate, and business should happen around it, which is a byproduct. I mean, if you're true to your core and if you're efficient enough, I think business comes. But even then, there are challenges. Like Karthik spoke about evolution, still evolving. News industry always faces some atypical challenges, which is typical to us, which is not there in the industry. Like for instance, I think we say television media. Television media generalizing GECs and news. I think GEC and news, as far as business structure is concerned, is as diverse as between news and FMCG. GEC, you go the traditional way, you figure out what the consumer wants, you create that content and you disseminate that. But here, we don't create content. So there are challenges and the stagnation of growth. In fact, it's a degrowth. So the industry faces challenges, and the biggest challenge then again is that it's free to air. And as Karthik said, while it is free to air, to reach the consumer, we have to shell out from our pocket. So don't you think that, starting with maybe Vikram, that when we say news media and television media, we take a liberty of generalizing that. They are not one and the same, and the challenges are very typical to news industry.
Look, I'm not sure I'll agree that from an advertising standpoint, we need to have different standards for the news genre and say general entertainment or sports.
No, one sec, Vikram. Here, many of these questions, we've got this forum. This is a very unique forum where three of you are together. You are a very important stakeholder. But not every answer or every reaction needs to be from the advertiser's point of view. I mean, you can go beyond that and wear the hat of a business leader and respond to the predicaments and challenges that we face.
In that case, rephrase your question because I think I'm hearing you say that you're finding that overall news is degrowing. Is that the question?
Look, the question is news possible. It's not a question, it's a proposition. The way I look at news and GEC, I feel that they are not one and the same. And the predicaments and the challenges are unique to news industry. And yet, like as I said, that we're free to air and we still have to shell out money for reaching the consumers.
No, absolutely. There's no question that news and GEC are not the same. Although some channels you might argue that they're more entertainment than news, but by and large, as a genre, it is much more. News is, of course, completely different. Just like sports is completely different from general entertainment, as is movies. So, yes, obviously, that's why we call them different genres, because they are fundamentally different. The reason why people come to them are different. So, from that standpoint, look, I think again, you've called me, I'm a media person, so you'll get that perspective.
Right. You always come up
the reality here is, and I think the beauty about news is that everybody likes to seek out news. So the reach, amongst all the TV viewing population, the reach for news is really, really high. The thing is that there's reach and there's time spent.
That's right.
And these two things make up viewership. So people, when during the COVID days, when people were anxious, they wanted to know more information about how to survive, I think the news genre did a human service. They did fantastic work to get the best panelists, best doctors. There was such great content that it became so sticky. All of us were spending hours on news genre just because we needed to know more. The share of news went up from 7% of all TV viewing to 20%. That's because people were hungry, and you guys filled that void with some fantastic work. But the same thing, when it gets back into normal news, reality is that people will come, take the news, spend a few minutes and get out. That's reality. What we try to do is, oh my God, I reached 20, now why am I back down to 5 or 6, I have to go back to 20. Then you start doing things which is not true to your fourth estate, it's not true to your core. Because then you suddenly said, I've tasted blood with 20% viewership share, how do I get back? And that's when things unravel.
Right, so Prashant, and I would tend to agree with you, Vikram, that if the content is good, with that kind of reach, you should have had higher viewership, the news industry, and the precedence is there. When we dished out content which is in the interest of people during COVID, a 3 times jump that we've seen. So, your bit to it, Prashant.
Yeah, see, definitely none of all this are same. GC is not same as news, so are languages, so are markets. But my humble request is, there is also a customer which is our client.
Advertiser.
Yeah. So whatever we are doing, we are trying to help the client or the advertiser to find a progress in their business. That's why they are advertising. Correct. And if you put the fundamental aspect that as part of a thinking on creating solutions, I think all answers will come from there. It is a fact that there are solutions which only has news channels as part of the solution. It is a fact. It is also a fact, unfortunately, that some markets may not be there in a solution for a particular campaign. And sometimes, maybe some of the genres like music or sports or news may not be there in some of the campaigns where an advertiser is creating a solution, which is a co-creation, right? Now, therefore, what does this mean? It means that we have to focus on the solution, which will actually bring the advertiser again feel confident that I have to be focusing on the solution, again repeat it and see a lot more longevity to the solution that we are able to strengthen, right? So I don't think we should base it with asking a question, are we all different? We are different. Definitely we are different, right? The solution on print is different to radio. I mean, look at media, look at within genre, right? But at the same time, if we all focus to create solutions that will create success for our customers, right? Our customers are in this space advertisers, right? We are creating solutions on that. Similarly, we have consumers where we position our content, etc. We also have, I mean, we are looking at a balance, right? I think there is strong value that can come on. And as Vikram mentioned, sponsorship, he meant properties, right? If we're able to create some content which will actually help the brands to connect with consumers, I think it's a great opportunity. We're able to get tech solutions, allowing them to say that we can give you some of the tasks that you want to solve for certain markets using languages. Fantastic opportunity, right? I think this is all telling us that we have abundant opportunities to create stronger solutions to our advertisers. And that is where the answers lie on our progress. And I'm definitely confident each one of us has many more assets that can be leveraged.
That's brilliant, Prashant. I think you hit the nail on the head that we are limited only by our capability to innovate. And if you are, as long as we are solution driven and not really go and ask for advertisers their buck, but provide them solutions, I think they'll be far more keen and willing. And I think because our content is far more adjustable, unlike GEC is not fixed, we are in a position to innovate more, be more solution driven. So we'd keep that in mind. Shashi, again coming back here, obviously you also talked about consolidation. Vikram said about the number of news channels. While we are scrambling for 15% of the revenue share, but there are about 600 of us possibly. So that's the problem. But there's another radical thought which often crosses my mind, and both Karthik and you can react to that. Do you feel that advertising driven, it might be radical, it is up for discussion. Do you think an advertising driven news media is some kind of an oxymoron? Like, for instance, I'll tell you, who are our two largest segment of advertisers, the corporate world and the government, right? I mean, shall we really expose a corporate house where he should be if he is one of the largest advertisers of us? And similarly for government. I mean, is that an oxymoron? Does it self-defeat itself?
Hello? If you want a theoretical answer, I will say yes, you should keep them separate. But life is not like
theory. Life is not theory. Yeah, yeah.
So you have to have, need for survival, you need business. And I mean, it will be foolish to say, because I think the senior people, practical people sitting here, so it will be foolish to say that, you need this thing. Why can't you coexist? I mean, all over the world, whichever market, I don't know which market has free press, so I'm not as bright as all of you, but it's very difficult to figure out which market is absolutely independent press, as Venkat ji called out. But I'm sure a lot of these markets are advertising funded. Ratios may be different. India is probably more dominant, or news is probably no dominant advertiser funded. Elsewhere it is maybe somewhat less, but they are advertising funded, whether print or TV. There's no going away from that. I want to make a comment earlier to what Vikram and PK said, and I fully agree with what they're saying. Just want to make a comment or make an observation more than anything else. There's a campaign running from a news network, maybe a member of NBF, may not be a member of you, I'm not sure. But it says our reach is more than GC's. I'm sure all of you have seen that campaign at this point in time. So I was in a dilemma. I was thinking about it, I wear multiple hats. So one hat which I will not talk about in this forum, I was wondering whether there's any violation of process, there. So it's a bit debatable, but that's a separate discussion. But I thought it's very good for the industry. I thought, if you see from our planner's point of view, and I'm saying this because today media is a volume game. People in our company, it is my company, I wrote Vikram and PK's company, the youngsters who take the decisions, we are the ones who come and give gyan in these forums. The actual decision making is being done by our youngsters, 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds who are running plans. For them, news has become a share game. So they say,
news has become?
a share game. So they say, listen, if I have to take news, news is never part of a plan in terms of building up a curve out of it. It is, but it's always okay. What is the share of each of these news channels? So if they say, normally they take 4 or 5 news channels in a particular genre, Hindi news or whatever, and they'll say, okay, what is the share? Am I right? Because that's how it works, that these are the 4 or 5 channels we'll take. No one has looked at news as reach. So I thought, keeping, like I said, that BARC thing hat aside, I thought it was a very interesting way of waking up our teams and the client teams saying, listen, news can be a reach builder. And if it is a news reach builder, how can we, so whether I like the idea of them comparing with GS or not is a separate matter. But I thought it was a very interesting way of looking at things. So I thought I'll leave this thought with you.
Right, Karthik.
I think Shashiji just hit the nail on the head. The problem is not that is it oxymoron that news should be dependent on advertising. I think the biggest tech companies in the world are based on advertising today. So, it's not a question of whether it should be based on advertising or not. The question is, should it be based on numbers? That's the premise. I think the biggest premise over here is not questioning advertising. The questioning of numbers is the biggest problem. And I think that's where bulk of the industry representatives who are sitting on this panel, they need to shed some light that if news is what it is supposed to be, and has to have that moral standing and all those factors that we talk about, why is it that the advertisers are only looking at numbers on news? Whereas that's not the only thing it's communicating. I mean, a channel can have 5% share, but who's to say which 5% of people are watching that channel? And what kind of TG is it bringing to the advertisers? So the slicing of the data and the kind of relativity that the advertiser needs also needs to be deep dived into, because it's a small part of the portion. Perhaps a lot of these companies are not doing that. I think that's my grouse.
That's a brilliant take, Karthik. So if you could quickly react to what he's saying, while as we just established the GECs and news are completely different, news also, I think the impact of news could have been a far greater parameter to decide the efficacy of a news channel. So Karthik is saying that why so much of emphasis only on numbers? Why do you buy both GEC and news under the same parameter?
Okay, now I think we're getting into the deep end of things. Things will get a little bit more hairy and interesting. Great. I think you raised a brilliant point. Look, as media planning has become more of a science, there is a reliance on numbers, reach, frequency, all that jazz. And people will look at numbers, and especially since they're professional managers who also have to sort of cover their backside, so to speak, they will be using numbers to actually come out with plans to justify, basically science to justify their plans. So that said, if I have to look, we're talking genres, if we have to look at GEC, sports, and all other genres and then come to news, there are 2 ways in which we media agencies buy or do our deals. One is linked to ratings, and one is just a rate for 10 seconds that you guys are selling. I would say that actually the reality is that news, at least 50 to 60% of it, if not more, is being sold on a rate. It is not only rating. Rating is looked at, but as we stand right now, people are looking at both. Second thing is that when you come to owner-driven organizations, you'll find the owner-driven organization who doesn't have to worry about covering his backside. They'll take punts and calls very well by say, qualitatively, I believe this channel is better or with whatever, and they have a judgment. It's not a gut call only, it's a judgment. And they are willing to sort of go beyond numbers to actually take a call. So I wouldn't say it's a complete, we aren't living in a completely sort of anally number-driven land. I think it's somewhere in the middle. It is much better than it is for a whole number of genres. You need to be thankful for that. Can it become better? I think the conversations can become better. But that's where it is. I think the state of the nation right now is, it's not a completely hopeless that people are not only relying on numbers. I think another follow-up question, I think after we go around is let's get into the numbers themselves. I'd love to get into the numbers because I think with the vagaries, with the with what we have from rating system, and BARC chairman is sitting here. I lead the tech-com of BARC, so we now have some idea about how the BARC ratings and even for news actually happen. I think we are trying to take too much out of those numbers, too much, and I think that's a follow-up question. But right now, to answer your question, Karthikeya, or your observation, it's not so hopeless. I think people are taking calls. It's about 50-50.
Prashant, you would like to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean,
Karthik's question.
I agree with every point. So let's face this, I mean, every brand does not have a potential 500 million customers to reach. And that's a fact. There are large FMCG companies where, I mean, they have a larger base to attend to, in retaining customers as well as recruiting new. But there are many categories within that same category or multiple categories where they are probably looking for 1 lakh potential customers, and as low as that. We as a genre has a much larger play on the upper funnel. We definitely have very engaging reach, not just reach on those. So they are all clear opportunities, right? Even if you want to read the numbers in a certain form. The question is, how are we narrating that story, right? How are we exchanging those conversations? Every table is a negotiation table, and if it just only restrict to a currency of rate per 10 seconds, then we both are responsible, which is a buyer or a seller. So let us understand that. And today I would like to add one more point, which I think is experienced with everybody. After 2.5 years of COVID, we are in a situation, this industry, with almost 35% of the people are probably new. Now it's a challenge, but I feel it's an opportunity. We got to educate them, right? I mean, we spend in our own organization, spending enough more time. Of course, today also there are challenges, people coming to office. But at the same time, our single most, focus is to continue train our people, right? So that's an opportunity for us to relate that. I mean, there are new people, there are people in new roles. In the client side, there are new people, right? So if you're able to narrate the solution in appropriate form, I think we can definitely make it much more faster, right? I mean, the result is all what we know, but if you want to look at the pace, I think that we can make a big change if you're able to attend to that as well. That's it.
If I just paraphrase what Vikram and Prashant said, that essentially there are, I mean, the third one you haven't touched upon, there are 3 parameters or 3 aspects based on which you take your decision. One, of course, number. The second is qualitative, the perception, which is more in case of an English news genre, less in case of a Hindi or regional. And the third is how good is the salesman, as you said, that how good he puts it across the table and makes his point beyond numbers. And we've seen our lives that yes, sometimes not only numbers, you look at other parameters also. Shashi, since you also are a chairman of BARC, I think one of the very critical aspects of news genre is the impact. The other genre can be sold on these 3 aspects, but impact, is there any way you see in foreseeable future, because news is all about impact, can we incorporate that part, maybe a little bit subjectively or maybe with any kind of reference number?
To tell you honestly, I haven't thought about it, but it's an interesting point. So don't want to bat without thinking, but it's an interesting point you make. Let me, yeah.
Right. Okay. Thanks. So from this advertising thing, let's move to the other aspect of our business, which we are completely deprived of, which is subscription revenue. Again, you guys are brand champions. You created brands, you created organizations, you helped organizations overcome challenges and came out victorious. How do we get these Indian consumers to pay for consumption of news. You see, our newspapers are highly subsidized. I think not even 20% or 10% of variable manufacturing cost a newspaper owner would have recovered. And most of the television news channels are free to air. I think while the industry operates at about in India, correct me if I'm wrong, is about close to 55 to 60% of subscription revenue, whereas the news genre operates at some 6 to 8% subscription revenue. That too also most of them would be bundled on its own, might not have been sold. We tried our bit, in fact, you know about that OTT, News 9 Plus, we've launched, and we aspire to make it completely subscription driven and ad free. How do you have, as brand champions, something to guide us on that? How do we go about, it may not be overnight, but how do we go about getting these Indian consumers to pay for consumption of news? Starting with you, Vikram.
Differentiated and compelling content. That's two things. So if take, according to me, like live sport, cricket, it is unique, it is highly differentiated. If one platform has it and you can't see it somewhere else, that's the only place that people will come and they'll pay because it's compelling content. GEC, they have the top shows. Currently, there's a show called Anupama. It's doing amazingly well. At that point in time, and you can only see it on Star Plus, so people will pay to get there. The thing with news and your challenge with news is, currently, I'm a reasonably avid news surfer, so I might see between 9 and 10 3 channels, and I find there is a largely the same kind of news delivered maybe a little differently across those. So somewhere along the line, and if you say there are 600 channels, think about the consumer. Why, if they're not getting highly differentiated content, and if it is not that compelling, then why should they pay?
Right. Prashant, I think here, as we discussed some time back, there's a problem that we got to live on things that had happened. We can't create incidences. Therefore, the challenge of differentiation always remains for us, unlike, as I said, GC or sports. Anything that you would like to add to what Vikram has said?
Yeah, I think, see, there is news and then there is the business of news, right? And this topic falls in the latter part. Now, I know there are limitations, there are regulations, there are tri-bodies, etc., from a subscription perspective and all. But I think if we are able to think slightly more sharper, which is what are some of the strong assets that we have, like the prime time viewing is a strong asset. Now, we should also understand that these are all habits that we've infused into the system. And some of it are legacy issues. Now, we want to create a change in the habit, right? Now, how do we create change in the habit? We may have to start with probably prime time subscription. I don't know, I'm just putting a thought, right? And I'm sure everybody has their own preferences of viewing prime time and news, right? But that's left to the choice of the consumer, which could be influenced by the channels. But that's how we start thinking on, right? Today is a world where many of our, different categories are giving opportunities to look at the models different, right? Commerce is a model that is coming in, right? Every one of us has got multiple reach. Is there a thought on how we look at, differentiated categories and look at how we can package some of them? I don't know. Again, it's a thought for us to think. It's also a time where we have multiple digital, assets that we ourselves have created. Now, is there a combo model there? It's again an opportunity to think in. So to me, if we all sit collectively together, we may have 100 such ideas, right? So if we can indulge in that, select some of them, create solutions to induce change in habits of consuming, right? And then create differentiation, which is a daily game for us. I'm sure we'll have solutions to that. Now, whether you want to hit the ball out of the park on day one, or whether you want to, do it in a substantial, in a progressive manner, I think that is left to, again, the business of news, which each one of you are focusing. That's my idea.
Right. Shashi, you want to add to that?
I don't agree with the fundamental premise that, it's difficult to create differentiation in news. People sitting here, anchors, celebrities themselves are
It's difficult. I did not say impossible.
Yeah, and I give you a small example.
And put it in perspective, more difficult than GECs.
Maybe. That always, my company is more difficult to run than Prashant's. He'll say, no, I'm bigger. Like we're having this conversation at breakfast. He says, I'm bigger, therefore it's more difficult to maintain. So I empathize. Look at Beyond. I mean, not be appropriate to give an example here. No ratings, nothing. Today our clients say, listen, let's get on to it. Whatever they did, there was a content, anchor, everything put together. So I think it's principles of marketing. If you apply all those principles for anything in life, we do it all the time for our clients, you'll apply here also. So, in my mind,
I talked about converting that into subscription revenue.
subscription
revenue. I don't think
subscription revenue, I think before you go to the consumer, you have to first convince the government with your power if you can't convince them. So if you get them to make it easy for you to get subscription, then half the battle will be won, sir. Am I right in what I'm saying? So,
So I'm sure that's written in the textbook as well. Karthik, we need to wind up. So before we come to the individual comment about future of news, anything that you would like to add to this discussion?
I think the problem here is not industry specific. It's a global problem. When we look at subscription in news, I think we're getting confused between linearity of content and subscription on the digital and other premises. I speak of it on purpose because globally, if you look at it, subscription in the new manifestation is still a challenge. Whether it's The Economist or the Wall Street Journal globally, even they're finding it difficult to get subscription. See, I think we are approaching it in an incorrect manner. The way we have to look at consumption going forward is that only way subscription will be possible is if consumers think the content is worthy of paying for it. And that will only happen if there's commonality when you're consuming content. So, in other words, let me put it in an example. I think the future of news for subscription lies in communities. A common platform where people come together to use content, consume it, and will be able to actually use it to their advantage. They'll pay for it. Unless it's generic in nature, they will not pay for it. And that's a problem we have to deal with. That's a problem because it's the same for us as it is for the rest of the world. I think the biggest challenge that lies there, and if I can come back to our earlier panel, because I wanted to make a point on that, is that which numbers do we go by? I mean, numbers when we speak of, we have two sets of numbers. We have numbers that we come through the television rating mechanism, and then we have another set of numbers that comes through digital media. And not to say that those numbers are not right, or those algorithms are not right. Frankly, they are far more in depth and far more in detail. So when we put out a video on a channel and we say that according to the television metric, it has reached so many million people. At the same time, when you put out the same content on digital media and we say it has reached to far more people than what the metric says, I think that is a challenge. So which numbers to follow? That is also a constant process. So I definitely ask,
I'll just briefly answer to that. Try and
I want Shashiji to answer that. So.
One sec. I'll just give it to Shashi, but I just want to add something what you said, and the question becomes complete then. I think if you talk about which number, while we measure broadcast audience number, that is broadcast. When you measure digital, that is digital. And I still feel the digital audience in India is still evolving. It's trailing a little bit behind broadcast. Having said that, I can tell you that couple of markets in India, like let's say Bangalore, Karnataka, let's say Maharashtra, there is a correlation between, let's say, a YouTube concurrent viewership and television rating, which is there in Hindi too. But some markets it's not there. But then why we can't strictly look at that from the YouTube concurrent viewership is that you can influence that by boosting.
But on YouTube might not be the only parameter, no? There are multiple parameters.
That's right.
So Hindi heartland might have more impressions on Facebook, while the urban cities might have it on Twitter and Instagram.
So Shashi, are we heading towards that?
I'm mindful that PK has a flight to catch, and this answer could take very long. So I thought, are we doing a session on
Yes. On the measurement rating system?
Because I'm mindful my friend shouldn't miss his flight.
Right.
So,
Okay. Finally, I think we'll ask for each one of you to comment briefly on how do you see the future of television news. And I have a proposition. I think the panacea for television news is, which is again very controversial, very radical, the total revenue of news industry is about 5,000 crore. So if I could give away 5,000 crore to all the news organizations, say that this is the revenue that you've earned last year, here is revenue for 1 year, and I'm giving you 1 year time to turn yourself completely pay and no advertising, and you'll have to make do with your subscription revenue. And the consumers will decide whether they'll pay 100 bucks, 10 bucks or 1 bucks for it. Will that work? Or if there's any other feature of news direction that you have?
So, my friend, can I go first? That's a very nice discussion for a conference room hall like that. Yeah, we are not going to go that path. So, may I make a suggestion? Be more practical. The practical thing is what I said. If you guys collaborate together, collectively as a body, and I'm so thrilled to see this body together, so many of you, and you find in a ways, have faith. Maybe offline, PK can tell you, Vikram can tell you, we are getting huge traction for ourselves when we collaborate. As we say, we fight by day, we are competitors by day, we are collaborators by night. Literally. The drink binds us together. So, there is a lot. That's my message, which is more practical than what you are saying.
So you're saying future of news is to consolidate and don't fight? Collaborate. Right. Prashant?
Yeah, I think very simply put, loads of opportunities. These are days where we are all very also looking at different challenges, etc., from the economy aspect. At the same time, this is a time where we can definitely collectively work and create fantastic solutions, right? So I see a bigger role of news channels in creating solutions for every task every advertiser is facing, irrespective of whichever market, whichever language. In fact, they are all strong points for us to deal with. My urge is to really, take some of the points which we spoke, right, which is leveraging all our assets, look at technology solutions, look at thinking more as solutions for advertisers, get it more collectively, talk more, change the narrative, talk more to the entire industry, some of the new ones, some of the people who are in the new roles, etc. I think they are all going to be a strong help to, get our pace much more stronger, right? Definitely, this is only going to get more bigger and bolder. You have a lot more assets which you are creating, each one of you in different phases while dealing in the same subject, right? And but the solutions and approach can be similar and be more collaborative. And as an ecosystem, all of us will work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Vikram?
Look, news was, is, and will continue to be highly relevant to everybody, everybody in India, everybody in the world. Since the question is future of news, I think the aspect I'd like to bring in is what will happen in a digital age. Currently, the way we talk about it is, we talk about TV, newspapers, digital, radio, so on and so forth, and we look at digital as a medium. Digital is not a medium. I think it's increasingly in the future, you will start looking at mediums a little sensorially as audiovisual, text, image, voice, experiential, like that. The audiovisual parts, even today, when I'm watching TV, and in fact this morning, for some reason my set-top box was not working, so I caught my morning news online. And it was good streaming, same TV channel, but I was watching it online. Connected TVs coming in, so on and so forth. So it's going to become, from a consumer standpoint, highly seamless, whether you're watching it linear or basically online. Worldwide, if you have to look across almost all of these mediums, the way we define them sensorially, about 30% of the viewership is coming from digital, and that will grow. The way I'm looking at future of news and the opportunity I'm seeing is, somewhere I think breaking news will break now online because it's here and now. And I think analysis, perspective, insight, and dare I say, inquisitions will happen on TV. And I think that is going to be the part where you really need to build. And I think that's where all news newscasters, they need to look at their digital practice a little differently from their linear TV practice. And I think in these two things, breaking news versus analysis insight.
Thanks, Vikram. Karthik, your words, and if you wish to sum up this discussion.
Well, I think I'd like to sum up by saying that news is here to stay, and the immediacy and the urgency of news cannot be replaced, whatever the medium be, whether it is through your set-top box or through your OTT platforms. Unlike GEC and other mediums, where the human brain has the ability to consume content when and where they want to consume, news will always have that immediacy and urgency, which is by its true nature not replaceable. Which is also true for sports. I mean, when the sport is happening, you need to watch it there and then. And the same logic applies for news. But having said that, I think the future of news lies in multiple manifestations. And I think people themselves will drive what they want to watch. The role of our editors and people who select news is going to go down, and we are going to become more driven on what people want to watch. That's the future of news.
Thank you very much. I think we had a great session. Thank you for coming down all the way from Bombay, Shashi. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you all. I'll just urge you to stay on stage for 60 more seconds. I want to quickly get in founding president of NBF, Mr. Arnav Goswami, for a quick reaction as well to this inaugural panel.
I just was listening keenly. I know you have a flight to catch, PK, but PK, Shashi and Vikram, 30-second thought from me. There have been unnecessarily jarring conversations between industry and news. This conversation can be a new start. I saw you say that news is a reach builder. So that shows your commitment from an industry point of view. But we all, one NBF, want to tell you, we all have an equal commitment to democracy. This conversation can be a game changer in the relationship between the media industry and the news side of our business. So we thank you, and we want to work collaboratively with you. In 1 month, we will come back from NBF with a white paper to you on how we can position our content in a way that is more applicable from a business point of view. I hope you give us an appointment when we seek it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So certainly the tone and tenor being set not just for the day today, but also the weeks and months ahead for the landscape of news in the country. Thank you once again, Mr. Prashant Kumar, Mr. Vikram Sakhuja, Mr. Shashi Sinha, Mr. Kartikeya Sharma and Barun Das for that absorbing, riveting discussion, as I said, on the theme, the central premise of today's conclave, Future of News. And now we're quickly going to be moving across to our next session, Future of News, Bark and Beyond. To give you more details on that session, I'll quickly invite on stage my colleagues Krishna and Suyesha. Could we please have you on stage to introduce the next panelists and give us more details about the next session?
Thank you there. Yes, that was a cracker of a first session, wasn't it, Suyesha? It's time now to move on quickly to the next session. Up next is indeed a very interesting, quick and interactive session. It's with the Chairman and CEO of BARC, Mr. Shashi Sinha, who has just left the stage, requesting Mr. Shashi Sinha to take the stage again, please. And also Mr. Barun Das, MD and CEO of TV9 Network, requesting him to take the stage as well for this session, BARC and Beyond, with the upward revisions in the sample size and periodical hygiene check. BARC is the best bet available in the market for measurement. BARC has stepped up to ensure that their technology leaves a gap for undue commercial gains not. And in this session, as I've been telling you, Mr. Shashi Sinha, the Chairman and CEO of BARC, please requesting you to take a seat. Mr. Barun Das, MD and CEO of TV9 Network, to take a seat as well. We're requesting Jaggi Panda, the co-founder and director at OTV, founder and director at Autel Communications, requesting Jaggi Panda to take the stage, and Suyesha as well.
And yes, of course, we also have Mr. Sanjeev Narayan. He's the founder of AM Television Private Limited. I also request him to grace the panel. Mr. Arnav Goswami, Editor-in-Chief of Republic Media Network and the President of NBF. He will be chairing this session. Rinki Bhuyan, the Chairperson and Managing Director of Pride East Entertainments. Thank you all. Yes, and we now leave the floor to the editors to begin this discussion.
Okay, we got one empty seat in the house, so Karthik, can I request? Oh, you've just had a session, so oh, come on, come on, come on, come on. We have enough issues with BARC, don't forget. Huh? And we'll open up to the house also. Where do we get a chance to sit with the chairman of BARC, the child of controversy? They say I'm controversy's child, today you are controversy's child. Shashi, thank you first of all. That was a great session, wasn't it? Let's have a round of applause for the last session. Absolutely brilliant. And we want to be candid. And I know this is going to be headline material. Chairman of BARC sitting with the organization and the channels who've complained the loudest to him over the last few months and years maybe. So Shashi, first question, why have you agreed to do this? This is what you call self-inflicted punishment. I gave you a choice and you said, no, I want to do this.
No.
So why have you agreed to do this?
So I'll tell you. The session.
This session. No,
you said
not
the chairmanship of BARC.
Both actually, yes. Thank you.
So firstly, before we go, I want to make one clarification. I am chairman. The chairman is elected from the board and it's a voluntary position. The CEO of BARC, as was called out, is not me. You can imagine mentally Nakul Chopra there. And if there are any mental knives, please, all the knives should come to Nakul Chopra behind there.
Oh God.
So I carry the good karma there. To this session.
On a serious note, yeah.
I tell you why I agreed to do this session.
Yes.
I believe we must communicate. I believe this is a large forum. And I believe there is a lot of issues, some real, some perceived, as far as new genre is concerned.
Yeah.
So just like you have this, of putting me under the spotlight, it's for me to also use this opportunity to communicate a lot of things which I'm reasonably sure will be a discovery to your audience today that that's not what is true about BARC. It's best to, it's easy to run away. It's best to talk.
So should we open the questioning round? Anyone wants to throw the
Absolutely.
first question to, who wants to throw the first question to, no, Karthik?
Can I first respond to what Karthik has said in the previous
go on.
panel? And, I thought he had a brilliant idea.
Can you hold your mic closer?
He spoke about TV plus digital, and just to let this audience know, and Karthik, I'm sure you know, that we have worked with BARC for the most of the problems with BARC are not technology or capability issues. I've been involved with BARC, well, I've been chairman for the last 6 months, but I've been involved with BARC in many capacities. This is a statement I want to make, and I'm sure most of you know this, that it's not a capability, it's a stakeholder management, it's so for example, we have worked on TV plus digital 5 years back. We paid Nielsen 15-20 crore rupees. We had to write it off. We were ready to roll. It's all about stakeholders agreeing that, we do need a common currency of TV plus digital. There are pros and cons. What are the challenges? So, and that's going to be my theme all through. Yeah. So it's not the capability issue. It's a stakeholder issue.
Okay. Shall I throw the first question at you? My first question to you is on landing pages. And you see, there is a responsibility that BARC has. You can't dodge the responsibility. Allow me to complete. You see, nowadays you have TV channels who say, we have a lot of money, we are going to throw money, we are going to spend 20, 30, 40 crores in buying landing pages. If we have the money, so be it. We'll be the #1 channel if we have a lot of money. This is an absurd proposition. Firstly, I think no channel should talk like this. I think news is about serving the audience with news, not trying to buy landing pages. Now you have the technology to differentiate between what is a landing page viewership and what is a normal viewership, right? If these channels say that landing page is a marketing tool, then it can be defined as a marketing tool. But when that marketing tool upsets the viewership pattern in what is a very sensitive genre, where the numbers are easily affected, BARC has the ability to differentiate it. Why can't BARC put out two viewership, with or without landing pages? It has the technology. It has the technology to do it. And the reason I'm asking you this is because, would you want to see a situation, Shashi, where there are only people with lots of money who survive in the media business? Now we have corporate houses, biggest industrial houses of India doing the news. Would you like to see a situation, suppose each of them decides, we'll spend 100 crores on landing pages, let's finish the business, let's destroy, then none of us who are on the stage will survive as channels. And I think you are in a very strong position. Am I speaking for NBF? Yeah? You're in a very strong position with one decision to make that change. You can go to these channels and say, if you believe in your content, then let your content get you the audience. Why don't you take that decisive step?
So may I respond? Thank
Please,
you for asking the
please.
question.
Thank you.
And thank you for making the opening question. Let me give you a context and not an evasive answer, but I'll give you the real answer. You know, I speak from the heart, whatever, it gets me into trouble, but so be it. So, BARC created a landing page algorithm about, I forget, 3 years back. At that time, I was not the chairman, but I was involved running the TechCom, along with, you know, the core TechCom, the broadcaster and an advertiser. So the then CEO of BARC, and there was an oversight committee in Praveen Tripathi, various people designed the algorithm, and they came back saying that we must cut out the entire session. So if we are discovering landing page, the entire session should go out, correct? Which is in a way what you're asking for, that the entire session should go out. At that point in time, the broadcaster nominee, and there's a point I'm going to make at the end of it, the broadcaster nominee on the core TechCom was from a large GEC, and he turned around and said, they were also playing cricket. He said, are you trying to say when I get a big tournament like IPL, and if you take out whatever the landing page, the whole session will go out, the whole match will go out. And he said, this is not acceptable. You know, we are doing it as a sampling mechanism, and sampling is there if someone is staying on, so you find out what is less and you want to move out. This is one point. The second suggestion which was made, and then the advertiser member on the core TechCom, very respected and able guy, he said, listen, we as advertisers, and I remember those words vividly, you know, we do shop displays, and shop displays, if you're doing merchandising, and if someone buys because of that, so be it. So this was the interesting thing, or no, the interesting thing was that BARC had recommended knock off the entire session, and, you know, it was shut down.
So you are saying that in spirit, allow me to complete. You are saying that in spirit you disagree with the measurement of landing pages. On the shop floor issue, one counter to you.
No, listen,
if I go to a shop,
let me complete the whole story.
Okay, sure.
The story is there. Now, so point I'm making, what I have where in my IPG hat is a separate point, in my point of view. But as BARC, our capability exists to knock off the entire session, correct? It was shot down by the collective wisdom of the board and the TechCom at that point in time, of which I was part of. Having said that, 10 days back, without going to, finally you must understand, BARC is represented, broadcast is represented what is called by IBDF, where all of you are members of IBDF, correct? So, rightly or wrongly, they are the ones who represent. 10 days back, with the president of IBDF, this issue came up again. And I narrated the story. I said, listen, it is your decision to tell us collectively, and then we'll carry the other stakeholders, whether you want the entire session to be knocked off or not. In fact, the algorithm for knocking off the entire session makes our life far easier than doing this business of what we are doing. So, now, this is just a 10-day-old story, and IBDF has to get back. It's not a BARC decision. It's a
Did you take a decision at that meeting of IBDF?
So, IBDF has to revert whether they want to go, as you know, this is a split house. You know, we also suggested, if you feel uncomfortable doing it for all genres, do it only for news. Correct?
Yes.
So my request is that it is not a issue of, and this is where when I talked of collaboration in this session, this could be one attempt. There are few broadcasters today who are for landing pages, many more. So it's for the IBDF to tell the organization, right, listen, we agree, you knock off the entire session. It will take off the entire session.
Since, I'm sorry I'm taking too many questions. After this, I won't ask questions. I promise. Odd. You see, I'm not anchoring tonight, so I have to make up. No, I'm just saying to you, Shashi, you're a reasonable person. You have great wisdom and experience, and I know that what you're saying is very genuine. We don't have a seat on IBDF, so we are such a large federation, and we are treated like we are not on the IBDF board, whereas others who have smaller groups are on the IBDF board in multiple levels. We would like you to, because you have great clout, to correct that, or do something to correct that, maybe recommend that. But in the interim, can I, on behalf of everyone at NBF and Indian industry, request you to allow us to petition you formally, and we've sent a petition you, meet you, and maybe as a group make a formal pitch to you on why we are pained by this, because Absolutely. We feel if India is only going to be run by 3 groups, one print group which has thousands of crores of rupees in its treasury, and 2 industrial groups who have tens of thousands of crores, then they can spend a few hundred crores on landing pages and upset, the news industry. We should have a balance in the news industry, we believe, and we would like to petition you for that if you allow.
You're most welcome. Like I said, finally, we ourselves have said this. I'm sure a lot of people in the room didn't know what I just said.
Yes.
That, chances are, please help me by raising your hands. How many of you heard it for the first time that, BARC had recommended knock off the entire landing page and it came back from the constituents, don't do it. So my plea to you, definitely you recommend, but I will go back to, unfortunately, IBDF is what controls the, it's on the BARC board. So I'll go back to that.
Karthik.
So if I may say so, we understand completely where you're coming from and appreciate that. The only limited point I would like to make is that for any reason, let's say this doesn't fructify and doesn't come to a conclusion, as there has been impasse on this issue for a while, at least what BARC has done in the past is that they have reported dual data, which means calling it out for what it is and saying, okay, this is the data with the landing pages, this is the data without the landing pages.
Which allows us to
Even if you put that out, which is a matter of fact, it will bring clarity to people and might even dissuade the people who are doing it because they won't get the ultimate benefit of it, what they're trying to gain out of it.
we're petitioning for that.
Good suggestion, Karthik. I don't know whether you've done in the past, but if you say so, they'll be easy to
Karthik,
implement.
we can formally petition BARC on this and meet them on.
So let me put this way, I didn't know we had done it in the past. So
No, sir, we are taking a flight on Monday. All of us are coming to Bombay to petition.
No, you don't have to take a flight.
We are very quick. Our federation is very quick, sir.
It will be easier
Sir.
for me if I figure out, as Karthik has said, that we have done it in the past, then firstly I'm quite surprised by what he said, because if we had done it in the past, why would we have gone back?
Yes, sir. I'll give you a personal example. I remember when India News had 2 LCNs on DD Free Dish, and we had inquired from BARC and saying that 2 LCNs at that point of time was perfectly permissible. And while it was permissible, our data was reported, it said that India News runs on 2 LCNs. So
Dual LCN.
Yes, dual
Landing
LCN.
page we are not done.
Yeah. So when there is enough precedence in the past to actually report the data when you call it out for what it is, and all we are saying, you're merely stating the facts. So there is nothing wrong that you're doing. This is the data with the pages. This is the data without the pages.
Let's get some other questions in. Jaggi.
Yeah, Jaggi Panda. So this is a question that I've even asked GVK, who's here, when he was with TAM, and is the contentious question that the sample size, the number of boxes have to really exponentially grow, not the gradual growth that we see now. So what is your plan for the coming few years in terms of what kind of growth can we see in that sample size, because that will kind of bring down the lot of ambiguities that we see in the data today?
So I give the answer in 2-3 forms. The first form is, I'm missing my friend Vikram. He's last promised having coffee. Maybe it's good to get him here because he will answer the question.
Actually, yes. Is Vikram here?
But I will answer the question in 2 ways. So it's a very expensive proposition. As you know, BARC is about 300 crores in terms of expense, and bulk of it comes from the GCs, because there's a 0.75, 0.8% revenue which comes in from there. So obviously it's optimization of cost versus Vikram sir, we need you here.
Vikram, there's a question on TechCom which you are
Jaggi asked a question which I think you're more competent.
Why don't you come up?
Yeah. So yeah, I need you to come up. So
it's an ambush. It's a BARC ambush.
So firstly, what is the number of boxes going up?
In terms of percentage,
No. So Vikram will answer the question. Will number of boxes going up, will it lead to relative errors being coming down? That's the question you asked. He will answer the question. I'm not sure. And at what stage it will happen. However, there is a big discussion happening at this point in time. Vikram and me are both involved on, and sir had started this on RPD, return path data. Yeah, we are working on that. The problem with return path, and that's in my mind, a foolproof way of doing it. There are 2 challenges with return path. Return path on DTH is possible. Not all operators are agreeing in the pilots at this point in time. On cable is a monster. Yeah. And I will say something because I believe I'm a friend of the industry. So, and you understand, I'm this part, I'll say in my personal capacity, not as BARC, that if you keep out, like some people are pushing us that, do only DTH and don't do cable. So time spent on cable is more than time spent on.
Of course,
Yeah. And the implication of that is that total TV already is dropping, it will drop further.
Even my question is on the same thing, like as Jaggi says it, like today we are an amalgamation of national and regional media. But when we are sitting, we are totally represent our NBF as a federation. But the same question, since I represent Northeast, so we have a population around 45 million people, so touching every doorsteps. Our issue is that we are exempted from a lot of things like in DAVB, but when it comes to the TRP, that is a bread and butter. So ultimately, logistically, we are not supported. And the same sample size of 50,000, whether it's representing the 45 million people, like how do we do it? And in an earlier conversation, as I was hearing, so when it was News Live, Assam is okay. But in an other channel, when we have the Northeast Live, we represented the 8 states. But the thing is that in that case, when we are not logistically supported, our TRP level doesn't show high. And when we go to the planners, they strictly abide by saying that, no, you are not included. Then our existence comes into a threatening factor.
Absolutely.
So how do we explain that?
I'll answer the Assam question. I don't know, problem is in the forum you say how much you say, but well, I made that way, so I'll say. So there are 2 parts to this. Assam is an easier one for fix. We have been debating. You see, today Assam is part of HSM, rightly or wrongly, you know. And when we do the relative errors, and I'm throwing this open for discussion so that, you know, feedback can come as he talks of petition. Sorry, he's one of his there.
I'm here, no problem.
So one of the debates we are doing internally, and it's a contentious debate, if you understand the implication of what I'm saying, or I'm going to say just now, that suppose we treat Assam separately. It's not part of HSM. So, as a reporting market. Once we treat it separately, then obviously the sample has to be representative of Assam. So, sample may go out somewhat. But when you treat it separately, then a lot of broadcasters use Assam to build their numbers in HSM, may suffer. So, that's the debate we are doing.
Right now we have 2 TV channels. One is Assam based and one is Northeast based. My Assam based, which is News Live.
So I said it wrongly. What I meant was that take that whole part out of HSM for discussion. Yeah.
Shashi, her point is
I can,
I think, yeah, Chiku can mention it better, but the point being made
yeah,
here
I can
is about
put it
sample
straight.
size and representation.
Let me put it straight. That we all know that regional channels are the future. But when the numbers come, the national channels, numbers are always, GRPs are always more.
That's not true. That's not true.
Let me just tell you, I just want to give you an example. Since I have both the things, so I know. Now, you know that in the cable, the time spent is more. We also own a cable network, which is the largest one there. We have 25% subscribers who have not subscribed to any national channel. They only watch that regional channel in their own language. And I think this is the trend all across the country. A lot of MSOs are sitting here. So regional channels, there will be a population of 20 to 25% people who don't watch any other language. They only watch their own language. So they should always have a 20-25% advantage on the numbers. But when the numbers come, we see that in the same language. You know, if other regional channels are there, their numbers are more than what the regional.
So maybe may I recommend we take this point offline, and because I've not understood the point. My point is that if you look at Andhra, or you look at Karnataka, or you look at Tamil Nadu, and you know the numbers, whatever we see, and I cut out the market, like Assam I called out because I know the problem in Assam. So here my impression is that the overall local language viewership is far higher than the national viewership. So therefore, I'm not able to empathize with
the point. Why was the reverse path, methodology not adopted when we all knew that that was there, and with broadband coming in, almost all the MSOs,
so,
all the DTH players, it was already
two-way. Return path. So the point I'm making is that what I said earlier, return path, firstly, we'll take that 2-3 complications of return path. The first complication of return path, so we are moving, but we are moving slowly in that direction. The first return path on cable is not possible. In most markets, cable is, you can't get return path going there. They're not, the boxes are not enabled. Number one. Number two, as you yourself said, on cable time spent is more. Our concern as BARC is a stakeholder body to ensure that perception-wise, total TV don't drop. Minute you do only DTH, it's not representative, it's not fair, because 60% of India is cable.
Cable,
And you can't ensure thing drops further. You know, that's the second point. The third point is when you get return path, you will get household data. Correct? I am a big believer if you go with household makes sense, but you have to attribute it to individual data. Correct? When you attribute to individual data, whatever runs we are doing just now, we are working on it. The error levels are almost 40-50%.
Yeah.
Now that is something.
Yeah.
You
I
may
think
not want.
that
I you know what it is?
Sanjeev.
The numbers are very less. The boxes, sample size boxes are 50,000.
No, I think the point-
And they determine 130 crores. So problem is, since the numbers are less...
Vikram, can you please help answering the question, the larger issue,
Yeah.
which is why I called you, and you are the master of this. That
Since
in
you have
different
taken over
ways-
as the anchor of the session, Shashi, now.
Huh?
You and Sanjeev, and you have taken over as anchor of the session.
No, fine.
But no, but Sanjeev, let him answer the question because we're getting late for the next one. Yes, Shashi.
So, Vikram, would you want to answer the larger question of our 50,000 boxes nationally or 4,000 boxes in a state like Andhra or 3,000 boxes in a state or whatever the number is, it may not reveal the numbers, or in Assam, are they enough or will you take the
No,
sample
I
up?
want to rephrase the question. If I can add to it, Shashi. The point which was being made just before Shashi called you in was, what Shashi said and further, there is a belief that like in elections, you know, when the population demography changes, there's delimitation exercise. Point being made is you are not represented enough in all parts of the Northeast. And the feeling among our association is that the representation of BARC is pre-decided towards certain geographies and that you need deeper penetration. It's not about increasing the sample size. It's about where you will put that sample size. Am I correct, Riniki? That's the point that you were making. Logistically, you are not in tune with where the viewership is.
I think also the other point is that, to put it in simpler terms, is that when you talk about the Northeast market, you're only referring to Assam. That's the fulcrum. I mean, if you say Northeast, it means Assam.
Okay.
The other states are not accounted for or neither represented. That's the point that I...
Wow. Okay, it's with 200 million TV sets and with the kind of heterogeneity that India has, it's obviously to say that it's a challenge to actually be able to say what each channel's ratings are going to be with a high degree of accuracy. It's a huge challenge. And we've got some 50,000 homes that we've got a panel in. So that it is obviously a challenge. So that's just giving you the setup. Now, finally, how do we look? Let me take an analogy. Whenever, say, elections are happening and the psephologists come in, they do some fantastic work.
Yes.
Some of them are very, very precise, and some of them are off the mark. But you don't like completely hang the guys who are off the mark. I mean, because they're also doing an estimation job based on talking to a few people and then coming back with a certain number. So I would urge firstly to have some forbearance with the rating system, because you can't expect it to be that bang on accurate, because if psephology is also not that precise and some of them are actually very, very good. I actually think BARC is also comes pretty close to what the psephologists do. They are more right than they are wrong. That's my first point. Having said that, the next question becomes the data that comes out. There are, for any statistician, the data needs to be valid and it needs to be reliable. Valid basically means that it should be representative, so it should be representative of the universe that we are measuring. And reliable is that if it says the rating is 0.1, it should be actually 0.1, it shouldn't be 0, it shouldn't be 3. Now that, for the validity of it, currently we have something that we call a baseline survey that we do, which sort of captures the entire media landscape, and from there we drive our sampling frame where our panel goes in. That is where we actually come back and choose where the 50,000 meters need to be. Would some districts or some regions be underrepresented? I'm sure they will be. Now, I guess at some point in time, the best way out is probably lobby like this, like you are doing right now.
Yes.
And maybe at the next point in time, we have to see that maybe Northeast we don't just paint with one brush, but obviously take it in and make sure that you got representation. But that will give you representation. It doesn't take away from the fact that if finally you've got, say in Manipur you have, say, 100 boxes, and you're supposed to represent the viewing of all the people in Manipur on the back of those 100 boxes. Is that enough or is that not? Now, that is where we look at something called relative error. and it's a statistical thing, and our attempt is to bring it down. Now the problem is that because the time spent in the earlier panel we alluded to it, since the time spent is so less in news, each individual who's watching news is watching it differently. So it becomes very difficult for us with any kind of precision to say that if the guy is, I mean, if you've got 10 people in your panel in one particular city and you're projecting them to the universe, it's very difficult to say whether the universe is actually watching that or not. So there is a relative error that comes up. I think the implication for us is that since our entire revenues and everything are based on that, I think a statistician in your organizations should look at the data with relative error. You know, the problem that we are facing today is we're looking at the data very, very minutely. We look at the data and at an all India level, you'll be fine. But the minute you take a look at one city, and if it's a smaller city, it breaks down.
But Vikram,
within that, if you have to look at it by day part, and if you have to look at it for one particular channel, it further breaks.
But Vikram, what I would suggest is, since Shashi and you, we are having this chat, and we have to close now, what I am taking as a concrete takeaway, no, we'll have to close now, a recommendation here. We would like to visit you as head of TechCom, Shashi as head of BARC, chairman of BARC, as well as Nakul as CEO of BARC, and petition you on two things here, which have come up in the session. One is on landing pages, and our views on it, and how we want to put it out here for your understanding. And the second is on the demographic representation of parts of the country. So we will trouble you again in about a month on this. But I must close by saying that, yes, Shashi, closing
Can I say
thoughts.
something?
Yes.
In closing,
Yes,
one
yes.
point I want to make. Since I've got this audience, and some of them are not here, but I want to make this plea. Help us by helping yourselves, which is stop infiltration. You know, broadcasters, well, collectively they talk, and I hope you understand the meaning of the word infiltration which I'm using. There's a fair degree of infiltration. We are, and I'm saying it publicly, I have gone to the IBDF president and said, listen, we have a big problem in Andhra, let's fix it, you know, instead of hiding underneath. Whatever you do, 3,000 boxes ma'am, 5,000 boxes, whatever you take, infiltration, we need industry help, otherwise we will stop the ratings.
May I respond to you by saying that it is factually been proven, and I don't want to go into details, that those who are being investigated for infiltration are not in this federation.
No,
I'll just wrap up by that, but I agree with you on the premise of it.
I'm making a...
Yeah, I agree with you on the premise, but I thank you for the generosity of your time today, both of you. Thank you very much. Shashi and Vikram, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Arnab. Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, Shashi Sinha. Thank you, Ms. Jaggi Panda. Thank you, Riniki. Thank you, Mr. Kartikeya Sharma. On to our next session now. Media is often dubbed as a watchdog, but does it need a watchdog? Or should there be a greater push for self-regulation? It's been one of the biggest debates for us here in the media. Has self-regulation served its purpose? These questions have always been part of the larger public discourse, but very thought of having a watchdog outside of the industry body has so far been unwelcome. As news media expands its scope and ambit, it must invest in beefing up its self-regulation mechanism so that it is ever seen above board. To speak on the issue of whether the media needs a watchdog, we have with us today the National Vice President of the BJP, a four-time parliamentarian and the author of a book called Lutyens' Maverick, Mr. Baijan Panda, a short audiovisual, and then Mr. Baijan Panda's perspective on this issue.
Fake news, false reports, disputable coverage. Is self-regulation sufficient to combat the menace? Are enough safeguards in operation? Or does the media now need a watchdog? Now on the NBF National Conclave, addressing the big question, does media need a watchdog?
I request Mr. Baijan Panda. Mr. Baijan Panda, please. The stage is yours, sir.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak at the NBF Conclave on this topic, which I think remains perennially relevant and important. Does the media need a watchdog? This is an age-old question. This is not something that has suddenly come out of the blue, and this goes back decades and even centuries, because certain elements have always attempted to manipulate, control, dominate the media in ways that are not legitimate, that are not ethical. So if we go back to the issue of freedom of speech and our constitutional guarantees of freedom of expression, right towards the last few decades of colonial rule, where there were attempts to have a modern, world standard freedom of speech right built into our constitution and our laws, those who led the nation in those last decades of colonial rule and in the first few years of independent India, they let us down, because they entered qualifications to those rights which have then been subsequently manipulated over the decades. Many of you will remember, at least those from my generation, if not the younger ones, way back in the 1980s, when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister, there was an attempt to foist a governmental control, a watchdog over media, and that led to a furore, and that plan was dropped. From time to time, some people have tried to come up with these ideas, but look at how media has behaved itself. It's worth looking at legacy media. Look at the marquee names in media. Many of them, in fact, I would go to the extent of saying most of them, have been guilty of misrepresenting facts on the ground, which the larger public didn't always understand. Once they understood, it has not been that easy to do away with it. Many legacy media would report a riot or a murder in starkly different ways, depending on whether the perpetrator was from a particular religion, whether the victim was from a particular religion, the descriptions and whether the names of the perpetrators were to be disclosed would depend on that metric, on that prejudice, on that narrative. That narrative was set right here in the heart of the country, in this core part of the national capital, which has been called the Lutyens zone. And the media and the narrative setters who made their homes here for decades were all guilty of it. Now, this is not something that has gone away, but because of more awareness, and I believe because of the explosion in media, there's new media that takes on traditional media, both in broadcast, in digital, and other traditional formats, although you don't see print media new entrants very much. So, what some of the member broadcasting entities of NBF, for instance, have shown, and shown very assertively over recent years, were for decades actually actively suppressed, as I have just been explaining to you. Now that has questioned the power equations in a manner which has disturbed those who have wanted to control the narrative, those who have wanted to control media, and you have seen the result of that. You have seen the results. My friend Arnab Goswami has been the victim of an attempt by a state
viewers today, our audience today, a bit more about, this first of a kind conclave. Now, let me tell you that NBF, the National Conclave, Gandhinagar, from Gandhinagar to Guwahati.
True. And that was the very idea of the NBF and how it came together, and which is why we have all the corporate honchos, top political bigwigs to join us in this event. I believe, Uday, we also now have a very esteemed guest lined up next.
Yes, I think he will just be joining us in seconds from now. He will be joining us in seconds from now. We will soon have him in our midst. And yes, as we've of course been saying that, this first of its kind news conclave is bringing you today those in power centers, those in powerful positions, of course, bouncing off ideas that will serve as a game changer for the news industry. Buoyed by an unprecedented need for it during the pandemic, the news media in India is observing a healthy churn like never before. This new habit formation thrives at the tri-junction of impeccable journalism, and in fact at this point we are now quickly moving on to our next session, a keynote address by Union Minister Dr. Jitendra Singh, who is with us. A warm welcome to him. Could we please have a round of applause? Dr. Jitendra Singh ji will be speaking to us about what the future of news reaching 1 billion homes would mean and look like. India's digital revolution has seen the transfer of cable TV to D2H, which has unleashed India's satellite technology, harnessing potential from a sole antenna being adjusted. We all remember that, the shifting of antennas when you were probably watching a cricket match or missing a key moment in a movie. But that is all of yesterday. Now we have, of course, numerous news channels using specific and the best satellite bandwidth to reach homes in high definition. With the advent of 5G technology, that was of course announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi recently, along with India making strides in launching artificial satellites, we will have unparalleled broadcasting capabilities, and all of this also falls in the ambit of the ministry of our next speaker today.
Yes, and needless to say, this will also ultimately translate to the scenario of news reaching to 1 billion households, which is the eventual aim. This will also have its own set of challenges, and the regulation will come as a paradigm shift of content proliferation. So, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together. To speak to us about these is none other than Dr. Jitendra Singh, Minister of State for Science and Technology and Earth Sciences under the charge of the PMO. He's been a professor, a consultant, clinical practitioner, author of 8 books, and a newspaper columnist, and also the ex-chairman for the National Scientific Committee Diabetes and the Research Society for the Study of Diabetes in India. And to welcome him, we also have an audio visual playing out before that. After that, we'd like to have you on stage, sir.
Let's play out the AV, please.
At the intersection of telecom, media and technology are the regulatory bodies with a mission to nurture conditions for growth, with a vision to play a leading role in the global information society. Universal access and reaching 1 billion homes is key. A level playing field for fair competition is necessary. Joining us now is the Union Minister of State Science and Tech, Earth Sciences, PMO, Department of Personal Training, Atomic Energy and Space, Dr. Jitendra Singh, to elucidate on future of news reaching 1 billion homes.
Let's welcome Dr. Jitendra Singh on stage, please, for his
a huge
keynote
round
address.
of applause.
Thank you for your kind introduction. In fact, I was about to come and I then realized the introduction was still carrying on. So thanks for reminding me of many of what oneself tends to forget. Nevertheless, I must confess, I actually didn't know where I am going, what I am going for. So I received a message from Arnab and I'm here because I knew it was going to be a good cause. And I think that about all defines the credibility of NBF. So I was sure Arnav and his team is up to something, so it has to be a good cause in the national interest, and that's precisely what I'm seeing over here. And I was just now told that it's 3 years old, and I must also have, I think I have no hesitation saying that Arnav and his team have, and the entire lot of this federation has actually